Hey everybody, Peter Maravellis here, hoping this finds you all safe and well. On behalf of City Lights booksellers and publishers, I'd like to welcome you to City Lights Live, our virtual reading series that continues in the footsteps of our in-store calendar during the time of the pandemic. We continue to celebrate the works of authors we know and love with readings, discussions, and forums moving into the summer season and hopefully towards a COVID-free era. So we continue to celebrate Pride Month here at City Lights with some very cool programming. Tonight, we are welcoming into our virtual halls a writer whose work we are humongous fans of here at City Lights. Camille Roy's work defies easy categories and exists in that wonderful zone where prose and poetic sensibility blend to form a delicious and really exciting work. We're celebrating the release of Honeymine, published by our friends at Nightboat Books. Camille's the author of Sherwood Forest, published by Futurepoem. Their other books include Cheap Speech, a play from Leroy Chapbooks, and Craquer, a fictional autobiography from Second Story Books, as well as Swarm from the Black Star series. Camille co-edited Biting the Error, Writers Explore Narrative from Coach House, and published in 2005. Actually, it was reissued in 2010. And Camille's earlier books include The Rosy Medallions from Kelsey St Press, as well as Cold Heaven plays from Leslie Scalapino's O Books. Their recent work has been published in Amerarcana and Open Space, the San Francisco MoMA blog. Joining Camille tonight is none other than Eileen Myles. Talk about a killer double bill. Eileen needs no introduction, having appeared in our series numerous times over the years. A consummate poet's poet, they are the author of over 20 works of fiction, poetry, nonfiction, and libretto, with numerous prizes and awards under their belt. We are thrilled to have both of them with us here tonight. Before we begin, I would like to mention that there will be posting links for you to purchase books in the chat function of your Zoom dashboard. This, of course, is very important because that is what keeps this series and City Lights going. So please buy a book tonight. There will also be a Q&A at the end of the discussion. You can post your comments and questions in that same chat function. So it is a great pleasure and a thrill to have you both here with us, gracing our virtual halls. Camille Roy, Eileen Myles, welcome to City Lights Live.
I'm being silent because I was thinking you would speak first, Camille. Yay.
I want to make a couple thank yous. Yeah, what can I say? This book was charmed into life by a set of co-conspirators and companions. Among these, first and foremost, I want to thank the editors, Lauren Levin and Eric Sneathen, for their amazing work. This included all the things that editors do, as well as the very idea that the book should exist. When they shared this stunning possibility with me at the 2017 Communal Presence Conference on New Narrative, I was immediately on board, but heretofore such a thing was outside my sense of possibility. It was also my good fortune to work with editors who are excellent because they are brilliant writers themselves. Lauren Levin has a terrific new book just out, Nightwork, from Goliath Books, and Eric Sneathen has a book forthcoming from none other than Nightboat, Don't Leave Me This Way. Another charm for Honeymine was being accepted by Nightboat, which was honestly my dream. I feel so lucky to be part of this fantastic list of books by queer authors. And being on that list has meant working with the wonderful Nightboat staff, supportive, highly skilled, kind, and visionary. Thank you, everyone. I can't hear you, Eileen.
I agree. I mean, though we're sitting in the womb of City Lights, which of course is one of the great publishers. But aside from present company excluded, I mean, I think Nightboat is becoming the kind of preeminent press of our time in terms of like a publisher that really gets it globally, locally, internationally. I mean, it's just like. And they do such fat books, and this is one of them. You know, I mean, I feel like this is like an instant, sort of pop tomes. You know, and so I think you just have entered into such great company. And you know, I love being here with you because you're my friend, and we've been knowing each other since the '80s, and so we've known each other personally and literarily, and I've followed your work devotedly. And I think you're kind of an enigma. You know, I mean, I think some of the ways you talked about the work when we were chatting before tonight, that it's not that you don't like it to be taken autobiographically, which is so interesting, and yet I can't help feeling that this is kind of a cartoon memoir. You know, it's sort of like there's a way in which it's just like you're teasing all the time. I mean, I think teasing is like you've really brought teasing and flirting to kind of like to the height of like literary skills, because I feel like you're constantly building something that seems very much like somebody like you, or like people you know, or places you've been, and then you have a way of like suddenly putting some English on it. Oh, I think that's probably a bad word to use, but as we met in pool and whatever the hell that meant, it's just, you know, it's sort of like it always kind of spins away just when you have a bit of that gotcha. I think I know where this is, and I think I know who this is about. It never is, and that's, you know, so it has this boof quality. And truly, I think it does always feel like it's very unstable. It's stable moment by moment, you know, like there's this gratification in knowing where I am and being turned on and excited and happy and in awe by the writing with and then suddenly I'm not there at all, or you just kind of throw it away. I mean, there's kind of a very kind of noblesse oblige about the act of making literature in a way. I think you seem like you feel deeply comfortable, deeply dismissive, and then suddenly earnest, and then suddenly confessional. So it's just like, I think you're kind of the perfect author in a way, because I think you're all these things and you're none of them at once. And I have lots of questions, but I guess that's my initial exuberant feeling about you, is that is just, go ahead. Yes.
I guess I feel that the moment of experience is unbounded, and I don't like to lose that.
Mm-hmm.
And I also like to write by creating experiences, as opposed, I like to actually create the experience. So I'm really interested in the textures of the words and the sounds of the words and the rhythm of the sentences and the way conversation just actually seems to happen. It's not written about, but is actually an occurrence. So, writing is not just representation, it's also action. And that to me is very, I'm skittish about being nailed and being defined by being nailed, So I do feel to avoid those kinds of traps. My path forward is through just connecting to the moment which is always unexpected, in a very intimate way. And then I think I can connect to the readers, so that the readers actually feel what I'm writing about.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But
you talk about you connecting to the moment, but there's a huge amount of historicizing going on here. Certainly about secret societies and communities.
Well, I really feel, I'm a child of, I'm a red diaper baby. I'm a child of communists. And that was a kind of interesting experience, because it was very present, but it was not something that people talked about. There was it was a kind of hidden experience, and there was always a feeling of caution about it, and but it was also the source of like a huge amount of energy. Like I felt like that this whole group of people my parents were a part of could, in some ways, they could always be counted on to not refuse the radical position. You know what I mean? Because they started doing that when they were young. And, but it was a very different kind of radicalism. Like it was really, it was like radicalism on the down low is what it was like. And
What do you mean by that?
I mean that we just have whole vocabularies and experiences of being open that they didn't have. They were
Oh, right. Yeah.
they were very cautious. And I was just looking at, there's a San Francisco writer who's passed away. Her name is Edith Jenkins, and her husband was a communist in the Longshoremen's Union, and she wrote a book called Against a Field Sinister. Against a Field Sinister. And that title kind of captures the feeling of that time, of going through that political era. And those are a bunch of prose pieces it's a wonderful book. Those are a bunch of prose pieces really about, it's like a layer of the communist experience on the American experience, sort of brought together. And you also feel with her, truthfully, that she's not giving you the whole story.
That's not, I mean, even that title doesn't feel entirely English in a good way. Against a Field Sinister. It's just like, it's either poetry or that last word is sort of like jammed in a way it might occur in another language.
Right, that's true. Yeah.
Well, I mean, communism is inherently about class, right? And,
Right.
and one of the things I feel in these stories is that there's just an elevator class-wise. You're always being pitched into some other completely dangerous feeling state that is being celebrated, and communities and, criminal, there's just like, there's a kind of a hot tawdriness, but it also feels like these are naturalized settings. These are not, I mean, they're buffed and shiny and pop and extreme, but they also feel very realistic and based in something that resembles memory or research.
I'm actually really realistic, like I try to be historically accurate, but I try to do that with poetic language and and it's I'm really into that. I mean, to me, that's part of building the experience. I try to give enough so that people can go to that place and time.
Right. And the bodies pile up too. I mean, it's just like, we'll be introduced to a dyed couple or something, and suddenly we thought they were leaving town, and no, they're actually burning themselves alive. And this one dies, and this one loses a limb. And I was just like, again, it seemed like political extremism, but witchy too. It's like something else.
I think this is a really brutal country. Yeah, I do. I really do. And I think that the distances of class and the distances of like suburbanization and all of this serve to conceal that reality, so that reality really takes place in its most ferocious form in places where the white middle class does not dwell, and so I think one of the challenges of writing a book, an American book, is that we live in this segmented society, and there's a kind of there's just fake realities that are on offer everywhere, and in order to really refuse that, it's actually you're representing a lot of difficult material.
Well, I feel like the kind of shattered storytelling that you do, I feel like is kind of an earlier version of, I mean, we only know what we know about our culture right now because of these, because this horrible thing was happening right in front of us that has been happening for 50 or 100 or 200 years, but somebody picked up the phone and made a little film and put it on the internet. But it's sort of like, I think the effect of reading this book is that you're pitched into lots of mini moments of historicity and culture and class and secret rooms that nobody was holding up the camera. There just was something like you that was there, or something like you heard a story about what was there, and is kind of pulling that little nugget out of the trove.
Yeah, and one thing I do want to say one thing really in defense of secret communities, and that is that I think that um, what happens in an underground community is you can play act your own reality and invent utopian moments that cannot exist in the dominant culture. And so you can have um, you can have, all kinds of pretend societies that then can influence the dominant culture over time. But it's almost like a laboratory. It's almost like a laboratory that's a place where you can experiment. And one of the things that I worry about with everybody is now their own brand on social media, and we're image saturated in a way that is unprecedented in history, is that we don't have secret cells anymore, and I don't know. I feel cautious about that. I feel that
Do
yeah.
we know that for sure, though? I mean, it seems like something it seems likely, but it also seems like we might not know. I mean, hopefully, I hope there are secret cells. You know what I mean? I mean, I just think that would be something great happening, as opposed to graduates programs multiplying, secret societies multiplying, strange little cults and rooms and fetishes and.
I think that might be the next movement, right? Let's have some secret societies.
Right. Well, I mean, the writing world is that, indeed. I mean, I do feel like we're a pile of cults. When you date somebody who's not a writer and you start to tell them about your world, they were like, "Who?" And you're like, you find the kind of biggest name on the heap, but it's sort of like it all, it's really the pile that's interesting. And I think it is, it is a gang of fetishists. I mean, and I think that's part of what I love about being a writer, is that's what I come from.
Yeah. Well, I mean, poetry cannot be a commodity. It's like this, it's this outpost against commodity culture.
Well, I think it's anti-narration in a way. I mean, I think that's what you do that's so funny in this book, is you just chisel these perfect fucked up sentences. I was like, that sentence is a boner kid. I mean, it's sort of like it just sits there. It doesn't make, things move. It just makes things stop moving. And then and then it's like you sit there for a second and they'll go over here, and start some whole other kind of movement. And I think it is like, it's interesting, as a prose writer, your sentences are poetry, and it's almost like, but the whole poem is like one line.
I think it's a lot of work.
You think, really?
A lot of work.
Well, this is a huge book. I mean, I think we want to hear you read soon, but I just want to ask sort of general things like how does it feel? Because this is very career defining. It's kind of like, is this you, or is this you? I mean, do you feel freed? Wait, you feel freed by this thing, or condemned?
I feel that I've made a record of many of my times, and I actually can't believe that it's actually real. I can't believe it. And, I mean, to be honest with you, there was a person, one of the characters in this book, that I found out, talking to somebody else who was from this time. I found out that she had died and I didn't know it. And then it turned out that nobody knew how she died. And then there was this whole set of conversations to try and figure out how she died. And it was just such a strange thing to have this book, which has her kind of in her prime, in her wit, in her style, and have it right here. And then have her, actually, she's already passed away. And it was like, somebody said to me, I mean, I don't know what literature is.
Oh, good, guys. I won't ask you that question.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. But anyway, the possibility that this writing about her would be here after she had passed away never occurred to me.
Yeah.
And now it's happened. So it's just really peculiar. Writing is just a time machine, right? It just and I think because it's a time machine, it gives people this ability to experience and learn from things that are no longer here. And I can't even tell you how surprising that is to me. I don't know what I thought I was doing. I think I honestly thought I was just writing stuff about my friends so that maybe next weekend I could read it to them and they would enjoy it. And they never enjoyed it as much as I wanted them to. Like they never really enjoyed it, and now they might not even be alive. Like it's just amazing.
So these are like fossils of your friends. These are their bed bodies sort of laid on some stone, and then thousands of years passed. And
right. Yeah, I know. It's like maybe language is a fossil.
Yeah. Do you? I mean, I have questions that are like, do you like Angela Carter?
Yeah, I like Angela Carter.
Because this is, I mean, it's sort of like she's much more linear than you, but it's sort of like I love her. She's one of my favorite writers, and she's a little obscure at this time. I mean, she was the shit in the '80s. It was like you couldn't be cooler than Angela Carter, and then she died young. But it's just like it's so fantastic and it's so rich. I mean, she's much more narrative than you, but there's like treacly. I mean, you just do not shy off from like bumping it higher and higher in the kind of confection. I don't know what the word is that I'm trying to, but you know what I'm saying. It's sort of like it's just like it's very unabashed richness. It's sort of like you're building and spinning a world that is like not at all trying to be minimal, except in a percussive sense, except in the way that you kind of break it up.
I always thought she was sexy.
I'm sure I mean, I think maybe I've seen one photograph of her, but the writing is sexy, and as is this writing too. I mean, it was obviously part of what I'm saying. Do you think it's time for you to read something? I think it's time for you to read something.
Okay, I'll read something. All righty. I'm going to read 2 of these Agatha letters.
Can I ask you now right away, who is Agatha? Where did that word come from? Why Agatha?
I wanted a character who was kind of an obstacle to the narrator, who was not going to give an inch and who wasn't actually very interested. And to write these letters to her that were, in a way, somewhat a little bit earnest, trying to explain all this mess and all this passion. So she's describing to Agatha how she falls in love, and the fall in love part is, I'm not actually reading those. I'm reading, she's gotten together with this character named Dusty. Dusty is a butch dyke who's just been busted for prostitution. Dear Agatha, I learned to feel comfortable, to wash regularly, to come for Dusty every single time. You have to give happiness its due. The moments when you were on top of everything, quivering, even if that was a mistake. You won't believe me, of course, but I thought all the elements of my life were wholly contained by the imagination of God. I had a terrific feeling of being inside that and outside everything else. I guess that's one way of saying that my sense of belonging was ecstatic. Is paradise just being protected by the right idea? My stubborn happiness ignored every crisis and required only Dusty. The strangest thing I had for her, the one new quality I'd never given anyone before, was loyalty. Inexhaustible, dumb, and sexy. Our difficulties continued. After the parlor bust, the incest secret blew up. Incredible destruction. One night after a movie, her mother asked her about the stepfather, and Dusty told the truth. That was the beginning of the disclosures. Dusty had 6 siblings, and she told them one by one. I was there when she told Clarence, her second youngest brother. We were in Sparks' yard, sitting around her flimsy card table. My silence was complete, almost breathless. The day was hot and moist. Clarence sagged when he heard. Shock revealed the terrible forward momentum of normality. Losing it was like dying. I watched him become estranged from himself the moment he realized, my father is a child molester. Blood drained from his face as he peered down at his plate and teacup. Mostly her siblings tolerated the news, swallowed it whole, without visible disturbance. Dusty said this was normal, even though the stepfather was a real predator, cornering Dusty every week when Mom was at Bridge Club and raping girls in the neighborhood. One night, Dusty's mom called and wailed into the phone. Oh, Dusty, I couldn't say anything to him. I tried and I couldn't. I'm gonna poison him. I'll get a book out of the library on poisoning. That's what I'm gonna do. I swear it to you, Dusty. Afterwards, Dusty sat there on the bed, expressionless. Then she toppled over. The sobs that barreled out of her mouth sounded like nothing I had ever heard. Blasts of wind. I lay down next to her and put my hand where her ribcage throbbed. A calm entered me, which felt like love, but also resembled neutrality. I sunk into it with relief. Eventually, Dusty's sobs became shudders, which slowly faded away. Dusty sat up and grabbed the phone. He should give me money. I want to call him. I'm going to ask for money. Blackmail him. It's a public service announcement. Tell him if he doesn't pay you off, you'll leaflet the school where he teaches. Leaflet the neighbors, put up a billboard. Everybody should know he's a child molester. I can't do that. What a fucking lot of work. And my family will hate me. They hate you already. Dusty handed me the second receiver and then dialed. She wanted a witness, I guess, or just support. I felt a guilty interest. I was going to listen to the perp talk. I'd be secretly observing him in his monster life. Hi, Dad. He grunted. I pictured an overweight white dude in a recliner, probably in boxer shorts, relaxing out on the screened-in porch. I'd never met him, but I'd seen a photo in which his sour face floated above a room full of lively kids. His tiny eyes sucked up all the light. He didn't like kids, but he sabotaged Dusty's mother's birth control, so she'd had 5 with him. Plus there were 2 from her first marriage, Dusty and her brother, Seth. Dusty he had molested, and Seth was the punching bag. From Dusty's brief and reluctant descriptions, I imagined the stepfather as sullenness in a wad, until he crashed down and silenced everyone. Shut up or I'll give you something to cry about. Dusty, what do you want? I want money. What are you talking about? I'm gonna need lots of therapy after what you did to me. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. You molested me. What was it, hundreds of times? When Mom went to Bridge Club? When she went to bingo? Every chance you got. That was years ago. I've moved on. You should move on. His voice was nasal. The only emotion it conveyed was resentment. What kind of person was this? Drenched with sullenness, drip, drip. He didn't deny anything. Was it not even important enough to lie about? Money. Anything I give you comes right out of your mother's pocketbook. You want to deprive your mother of her basics just because you haven't been able to let go of your miserable childhood? I'm not giving you a cent. Your miserable childhood. Dusty was silent. Her face had emptied out. Then she took a deep breath. I've told everyone. What do you mean? I've told Mom and all the kids exactly what you did to me, and the girl down the street too. He was silent. When Dusty was a kid, he'd threatened more than once to kill her mother if she told anyone. You're sick, and now everybody knows it, Dusty said. Then she hung up. Well, you did it, I said. You told him. Yeah, the asshole won't kill anybody. He's too old. I'm out of the house, and everybody knows. Right. My love was so selfish and perfect that I could handle anything. Dusty's grief streamed into it. She became strange in her eating habits, restricting herself to boiled spinach and boiled eggs and seeds. She got thinner. I remained serene. There were books on love in the parlor, which had been left by a retired lawyer named Albert. He'd leave them behind like droppings. It was Albert's higher calling, spreading the message of his love guru, Leo Buscaglia. Real love always creates, it never destroys. Love is open arms. If you close your arms about love, you will find that you are left holding only yourself. Love is a warm and wonderful encounter with Leo Buscaglia. What I had was so good, I felt cruel. A little room opened in my brain and started showing movies, which I could almost ignore or turn off, but not quite. Mostly the images were of a knife stabbing a soft white belly sprinkled with hair. No face, no sound. I wanted to do it. I told Dusty what was going through my head. Life goes on, even for psychos. My problem is not your problem, Dusty said. But if anyone could kill him, I could. I'm the one. Listen, said Dusty, I have a sense of justice, so shut up. It was true. Dusty preferred justice, like some people prefer the color yellow. It seemed arbitrary, but there it was. I walked around just doing my business, and sometimes the movies played, and sometimes they didn't. It made me feel like a somewhat abstract personality. Still, my love thickened its root. It stunned me. I was so happy. Love, love, love. Sincerely, Camille. Should I read another one now?
I mean, I think read a little bit. That's. I mean, I just want to say, that the thing that's so great is it's like the relationships and the partnerships and the devote. It's like the religion of the book throughout. And even if they're like daft, and you're watching the lover shrink, and turn into molecules or something, it's like the devotion is unaltered, whereas the other generations are just scummy and just like. I mean, I don't want to go too much. Maybe do you feel like reading? Would you rather keep reading?
I kind of want people to know what happens next, but other than
okay,
that.
let's give it to us. You have to give it to us then, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
But that was such a great ending that I just want to say I applaud it now and now more, please. Yeah.
Okay. Dear Agatha, mostly I remember the people. Brandy, for instance. Brandy was the one who led everyone right into trouble when it was festive, like discovering money. She had a parched thinness that was underneath gender, deeper than that split, eviscerated and sexy. She was Peter Fonda, incarnated as an elongated girl. Her band used to play on Friday nights. I picture her as I write this, Brandy on the bass guitar at a dark corner of the stage, wearing a pair of mirrored aviator shades that she swore were vintage 60s. Karen was the one who taught me about information, that it was all there. All I had to do was ask. I was shocked and weirdly honored and giddy at that brink. She nailed capitalism, union organizing, the correct political line on sex work. She told me who was blowing who and for what. She gave me a copy of Pedagogy of the Oppressed. Karen was a fiend for organizing, really a genius. She didn't get caught up in the parlor bust because she was at a meeting to organize a transit workers union, but she planned the whole defense. In her schoolgirl white blouses and wool skirts, Karen didn't look anything like what she was, prostitute, communist, queer. She had that helpless genius incongruity with her own body. Towards the end of her life, she began wearing knee-high boots with her skirts. On Karen, stacked heels and stubby toes looked like an odd, racy flowering of femininity. A bit of a shock. It seemed she was edging towards something new, but she always drove herself with such urgency. And then one day, there was an accident, on an icy road. The one political cause Karen never mentioned was animal rights. It may have been the most important. I found out about this when I went to her farm for some organizing meeting. I'm not sure why I went. I was only a body at various events. I never organized a thing, but I piled into the pickup with Dusty and Brandy. On the way, Brandy told me that Karen's dad had a slaughterhouse. He forced his kids to work in it. Blood flowing in the gutters, body parts swinging from the rafters. So now Karen's got 15 rescue cats and 6 rescue dogs, a 500-pound rescue pig, a pony, a cow. She feeds their tumors, Brandy said with relish. Dusty gazed soberly ahead. The whole campaign was mostly to get her off, and today she was serious about that. I felt her thigh solid and warm against mine. As soon as we walked in the kitchen, Karen handed Dusty a paper. At the top, scrawled and underlined, was the heading, 3-pronged resistance. And there were 3 columns drawn with subheadings, provocations, events, celebrities. Then she noticed me. I thought her eyes scrambled. I was such a nobody, I guess. Politically, I mean. I hadn't done anything. I didn't register. I have a pony, said Karen. Her name is Sparkle. Not that it matters. Sparkle doesn't come to sparkle, if you know what I mean. You can ride her if you want. I went out to the barn to meet my new pony friend. I felt fine-tuned and fatalistic and full of deadly curiosity, but no one else seemed to notice this. Bitterness of youth, stuck with nature for conversation. But this is more true. So happy to be there. After a month of awkwardness, Dusty had become a sturdy sexual partner, so believable that I sunk deeper into my love state, pliant and yet grounded, muddy, sweaty and unclean or not. I woke up feeling nude, smooth. It was brilliant outside. The morning rain clouds had scattered and sun shone down upon the clover underfoot. The breeze was soft as lotion, almost sickening. I kicked at the mud rivulets which scored the road down to the barn. My boots lifting up, slurped. The barn door was a pocket door, the kind that disappears into the wall. I pushed and the door slid smoothly away, releasing manure and animal sweat. There was rustling inside. When I got used to the darkness, I walked around. The pig was in a stall that bore a name tag, Tony. He was nearly as big as a bull. Tony's eyes were tiny, but he regarded me with a skeptical intelligence. He stood with a kind of nobility, a whole pig country, midway between a pile of clean straw and a puddle of manure. The cat mewing at my feet had no eyes at all. The pony was drowsing in her stall, ears askew and eyes half closed. You're coming with me, I told her. I didn't notice the tumor until I'd gotten her tied up in the hall. A dark knotted growth, bigger than a grapefruit, distended from her stomach. Was this alarming thing going to flop around? I squatted to stare at it. Black, mane-like hairs sprouted from among the wrinkled folds. It appeared to be firmly attached. The pony ignored me, dozing, her tail lazily slapping a fly now and then. If it jiggled during the ride, I couldn't feel it. Bareback, we went through the meadows, which were lush and deep. Grasses stroked the bottom of my shoes. There were clouds in big white piles, and biting flies fell from the sky. Sparkle and I went off down a tractor trail that eventually led through a glade of cottonwoods to the Pontiac River. There, the diseased pony drank the muddy water while I warbled an old Beatles song. Love is all there is. Love is all there is, or something. After the ice storm the following January, when Karen's Toyota landed upside down in a glade of leafless birch, breaking her neck, the hardest part of wrapping things up was Tony. The other creatures were placed, including Sparkle, who got to be a companion pony. All Sparkle had to do to earn her keep was to plod around and eat grass in the pasture of a valuable and nervous thoroughbred. Poor, smart Tony. He went to the slaughterhouse. Who can take on a 500-pound pig?
That's the finale you wanted to get to.
That's the finale.
That's amazing. It feels like, I mean, we should just, yeah, we put that out as a kind of a universal question. People will take it on. People want that pig.
Yeah, people do now.
You write really good animals because I feel like you don't, they're just kind of part of this, they're part of the brood kind of.
Yeah, I really like animals. I like some animals.
You'd like some animals in your life? Is that what?
Animals are good, yeah.
I feel like I'm going backwards a bit, but like, did you think abuse was normal when you were a kid? It's sort of like, is it so every day? This the kind of the abusive dad who fucked all 6 daughters, and the partner that wants to kill him, and
that was the narrator. Yeah, no, okay. Did I think it was normal? I think that
that was the narrator. No, good point. Right.
One of the things that is, one of the things that I have had a hard time with, and I don't know how common this is just to make what I actually know about from my life representable in literature. I think there's a big gulf, and so I just think it's been a real struggle, and and it took me, I think that it's just been a characteristic of my life, like, since I grew up in a family that was, or since I was a red diaper baby, it's always been like, what's the story? It's actually just a huge amount of work to begin to tell a story like that.
Right. Well, I feel like it seems like the story is sex. I mean, it seems like sex is a narrative here, and then nature. I mean, it's sort of sitting in nature in this way. I was very glad that you came back to Karen's death. You sort of earlier you suggested that there was this car, and I thought, is that just a hint, or did that actually happen? And you returned to it, and I felt like that was kind of a narrative precision that made me feel very kind of satisfied in a certain way.
One of the things about that time is that, some of the people that I'm writing about in there, and Karen is one of them, are actual people. And one of the people that I contacted recently has fabulous archival resources, Gail Rubin, who's a professor at the University of Michigan and was actually part of all those communities. And she sent me some archival material on the character that Karen is based on. And that was just so fascinating. It was so fascinating to read. I mean, some of the people that, I feel like I've met lots of people in my life that just kind of break the mold of what's possible. And then I don't know how to tell the story of them. And Karen, who is Carol Ernst, is actually one of those people. And so, my feeling is that really knowing really knowing some of these underground communities and the potentiality that they have, and one of the things about that radical community in Ann Arbor, Michigan, was that it was very, very successful. It took on organizing the transit workers. They succeeded at organizing the transit workers. It took on a kind of racist railroading of 2 Filipino nurses for some deaths at the Veterans Hospital. And they got those Filipino nurses, they succeeded. I mean, they just succeeded at so many things. And, it's very hard. It seems, I don't know. Yeah, there's a part of me.
That's very much an untold history.
Yeah.
the successful actions of radical communities, you know?
Right. And I mean, one of the things that might happen, we might do an event that's kind of got archives and stuff attached to it around this book. So that's in the planning stages, but it's just, yeah.
But I think you're doing that thing that all writers do, which is that you just sort of said that, like, it's very hard, it's impossible to tell the stories of all these, and yet that's totally what this is. You know,
Right.
it's sort of a compilation of you know, mini narratives of so many different moments in communities and spaces and privacies. You know,
Right.
so it's like you are that narrator. You know, and these are those, you know, those pieces of that, like, that untold history. You know, hey, where are we at time wise? I have no idea. Are we?
Oh, we can go on a little longer, but or we can jump into Q&A. I leave it to you.
I mean, I'm curious to hear what if we have some questions, I think we would, you know, let's hear it. Though I do want to. Do you have any desire to write? I mean, there was something about when you were talking about Karen and having. Do you ever think about taking one character and actually delving, or taking one animal? Do you already have a fantasy about? I mean, it's like obnoxious. You're just beginning your book tour, but do you have a fantasy about what your next book would be? Because usually it's the opposite of this.
You know, I'm interested that everybody's talking about animals. That makes me think there's something to explore there. It sounds like it would include something I really like, which is the physicality and sparkle of just bodily life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. On for that.
Dia Felice asks, what
Okay.
do you like in an animal, Camille?
Oh no.
You know, animals have relationships to us. They love us. They seek us out. We can make them happy. It's one of the satisfactions of being a person that you can make an animal happy. I think that having happy creatures around oneself is really, really rewarding. And truthfully, it's easier to do that with a cat than with a person. And so, yeah, I just think animals are lovely to be with. And yeah, I enjoy their company.
Rachel,
is there one in the house right now? Could I just ask that? Is there an animal in the house?
There's a kitty who's right here, and she is.
Okay. Right.
Here she is.
Good. Yay. All right.
She had to come say hi. She wanted a little cuddle.
There's a parakeet. So Rachel asks, I'm interested to hear more about the contradiction, conflation, juxtaposition of fiction and the archive.
Yeah, well, you know, one of the things about archives is you can dive into them and they're not, they actually, in order for you to be there and feel it and experience it, it needs fiction. The archive, there's so much that's missing, you know, like if you read, like I read an obituary of Carol Ernst, and it didn't include how she walked into the room. It didn't include how she started to wear sexy boots. It didn't include the abstract look on her face when she was talking about politics. You know, there's so much about her like presence that the archive didn't create. And so I mean, you know, it's kind of, I mean, this sounds terrible, but there's something about writing historical fiction where the history is really well imagined and the time is really encountered. That seems very valuable to me, because then you get to go, you know, to this different I don't know. I feel that you learned something from that. I don't know. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But I like to be accurate, you know. This is the thing. I don't like to have my fantasies. I don't like people to read me just to get in touch with what my particular set of fantasies are. Like, I don't find that very satisfying. I want to have some kind of window to experience that's that other people can look through. History and experience.
I think it's really interesting for you to invoke historical fiction in relationship to your work. It's really great. I hadn't even thought about that, but I think it's really true. Yeah. We get more questions coming here. Is that?
You know, I think I have one. So you mentioned writing as time travel earlier. Is there a revolutionary potential in narrative? Can transgression be used as a kind of a revolutionary tool of sorts?
You know, I think whenever any group of people starts to be in the swing of real political action, they are all in the swing of a narrative, right? They all have the narrative of racial liberation, queer liberation, class struggle, and people, you know, people die for those narratives. They totally, they choose to die for those narratives. And that's kind of why you need to be really careful with them, because they're that powerful. And I also think that those narratives, you know, have the power to take this disparate group of individuals and turn them into a force, a collective force. So, yeah, you know, I have to say something. I want to say something here, which is that I once heard some students, they were kind of making fun of me, who were in my workshop. Some of them might be here tonight, I don't know, but they were making fun of me because I had a reputation for taking my students hostage and basically lecturing to them about politics. You know, that's what I would do with my poetry workshop. I couldn't help myself because I was constantly, I had such a sense of urgency about my political narrative. And I have to say, it's possible that my favorite thing about having this book is that everybody reads my politics.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like that's my narrative. I hope that is, I'm outing myself as a political freak.
So I have a question from Lauren. In our interview with you for Nightboat, Eric mentioned that you had talked about a Dickensian novel idea that you had. Could you say more about the idea? Is there a Dickens novel coming? I can see your work as what might happen if Dickens had read Virginia Woolf, Samuel Delany, Eileen Myles, etc.
You know, I'm going to have to think about what I want to do after all of this because, you know, I actually kind of left the writing world, you know, 10 years ago. And I'm going to be tasting, you know, possibilities and potentialities over the next 6 months or so. I'm going to be trying various things out. I'm going to try doing things like going to Provincetown, what I've never done before. So yeah, maybe there's a Dickinson novel after I go to Provincetown.
So I think we have time for maybe one more question, if anybody wants to take a shot. Okay, S. Holland has a footnote. The structure of the limbic system, which controls the emotions, is identical in the cat and the human. They are us, we are them.
Oh, interesting. Huh. Well,
Okay, so Sid asks, how would you talk about the character in your book named Camille?
Right.
Camille she's like a puppet that sometimes I choose to occupy and sometimes I abandon. And because she's a puppet, when I'm occupying her, I can't be directly seen. So that gives me a certain amount of freedom. I get to both combine visibility and invisibility.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that is about all we have time for, though. And I kind of wish this could go on. This is so much fun. Really want to thank the both of you. Camille, Eileen, you both rock. Thank you for joining us. Also, thanks to all of you in the audience. I encourage you now, please do consider buying a book. I have posted links with which you may do so. So we hope you all will stay safe and be well. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Camille, I will give you the last word.
Thank you, City Lights. Thank you, Eileen. And, thank you, City Lights, for being a beautiful, brave institution of San Francisco culture and such a sanctuary. So, and thank you, Eileen, for being an inspirational person to me always.
Oh, I love you. This book is so massive. Thank you for writing it. Okay.
Thank you for helping me launch it.